Yeah, yeah. Making her way to the mic. They start dimming the lights. You start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs, and the room is stutters. More once you discover. For all of the lovers, Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers, and Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers, and Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. For every one of us, I was kinda late, 'cause I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the fate, 'cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of the flow, yeah.
Hey y'all, it is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast live vibe with your girl Stephanie Hardy. And of course, I am not alone. I am sitting with someone who I absolutely admire and someone who I have had the pleasure of meeting in New York with all of my adventures that I had in New York last year. Oh my gosh, but thank you. If you are watching live on all platforms, thank you for watching. I see people in the comments already, piping in and stuff like that. So thank you. But I am sitting here with a special person. She is Seindole. She is a honorary wrestling girl for those wrestling girls. Of course, if you love that platform, those groundbreaking women. And of course, she is the founder of The Well Minority, which prioritizes mental health in Black and brown people. So let's welcome Seindole. How are you?
I'm doing good stuff. Firstly, I am like beyond humbled that you had all these wonderful things to say about me that I was about to say about you, but I'm so honored and I'm so happy to finally chit chat with you and be here with you. I feel like this is long overdue because we've been talking about us even having this conversation for a long time, but I'm just way too excited to be here. Way too excited to really be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. Like we've been talking back and forth about it, for a while, but scheduling and life and stuff, but I am happy that we are able to do this.
I
You know,
know.
I'm so excited. So yeah, I have to start by asking you, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
Let's see, my earliest memory, honestly, we're talking probably like 12, 11 years old. I want to say, I want to give away my age. Jesus Christ. I want to say, I want to say definitely like early middle school. Like we're talking probably 7th grade. I got to watch my first SmackDown episode because when SmackDown like debuted on TV, and like I always joke around like I was a poor immigrant kid with like no cable. So all I've heard of Raw was like all the schoolboys talking about like what was going on Raw and blah blah. And I'm like, oh, wrestling, like who cares? Like this is not like that's stupid. That's boy stuff. But then I also have like a younger brother who was also into it. So SmackDown debuts and I'm watching it. Just seems like it's the most exciting, electrifying thing going on. And then all of a sudden I don't see a lot of women. At first, I'm not gonna lie, I'm like, okay, again, it's like typical male stuff. But then I see like this trio of like awesome people. They like ripped out in rock clothes and they come out in their headbanging. And I see this chick in the middle and she's like sporting like a high thong with like fiery red hair. And for some reason, I'm like, who is this? And why am I like so like focused on her? And then I'm watching a match and I'm watching her like take her legs, jump off the top rope, swing around some guy, and just like lay him out like on the floor. And I'm just like, wait, who is this person? And I find out it's Lita. So Lita was first, like my first real big draw into wrestling. So with that being said, I was like, okay, maybe there's something I can get into. And there's like a lot more people. Like I saw Jacqueline was on TV at the time. The Rock was like kind of like people. I had already heard about The Rock a lot. So people were just like, "Oh, The Rock is this and The Rock is that," and I'm just like, "Okay, let's see what this is all about." And I didn't realize it really turns like a weekly thing
Mm-hmm.
until at one point I was like, I realized that I did not want to go out on Thursdays. Like I had to make sure the homework was done because, like I said, I come from an immigrant background. I had to make sure the homework's done. I had to make sure that, the dishes were washed and all that stuff before I can even get into watching. It just became like an annual thing for me. And then like everything else followed, I guess, smoothly. Like my parents started realizing I was watching it. They weren't a huge fan of what was going on because, it was still like peak at like post attitude era into the ruthless aggression era because like the
Mm-hmm.
draft and everything happens. But all in all, like my parents were like, listen, this is what you're into, and it's not, I can't say the D word on here if it's not like, you know, drugs or
Mm-hmm.
booze or anything like that, then they're okay with it. So that's pretty much been it. And then I took a bit of a hiatus because I was trying to like be aspiring high school graduate. I always joke about that because I was like in school studying really hard and it fell back and I couldn't really watch. And then I got back around circa college because I had college friends that were also into it. And these were like the friends that would go to like, oh, blah, blah, blah. We heard that this show is happening in South Jersey. Don't you want to come with us? And I'm like, wait, people are wrestling in the indie circuit. And they're like, yeah, yeah, there's like all these guys. It's called Ring of Honor. Like, let's just go to this show and let's just go and like it's gonna be fun. I'm like, no, the only wrestling that I know is WWE. So fast forward, it ended up being a trip to Philly.
Oh wow.
I told my parents I was going to the shore. And then they're like, "Oh, where are you?" And I'm like, I'm in Philadelphia." So they were just like, "Why are you all the way down there?" But oh no, my first real Ring of Honor show was actually 10 times better than anything I ever saw on TV. It was a small community of people, and the love kind of just grew from there. And then people from Ring of Honor started going to WWE, and that's a whole another story. But yeah, that's pretty much how it all started. Just
Yeah,
me having a hobby.
I love how it started with SmackDown because that's literally my favorite show.
Oh my
I love
god.
the Blue Brand, and another deeper reason why I love the Blue Brand is because SmackDown is the show that comes to Birmingham the most. Like,
Mhm.
we did just have a Raw this year, but that was the first Raw in I believe 6 years. But we literally SmackDown is literally the one that comes to Birmingham the most, and that is my show, and I just love it so much. So I'm glad that you actually got into it via SmackDown, and then you got into it via Lita, who is just like legendary, and the
Mhm.
Hardys, who are my brothers in my head. Um, so deep down inside, they don't know it, but either way, they
They know it. They know it in spirit. That's what I always
yeah,
say,
they know it. They
spirit.
feel it. Somewhere they feel that someone is claiming them. But either way, it's really cool that you started off that way and you actually got to go to a Ring of Honor show.
Yeah.
Like, I remember back then, I didn't even know that Ring of Honor was a thing. Like, I remember finding out about Ring of Honor through CM Punk's Pipe Bomb.
No, I remember the last I was at one of the shows he actually had, and again, this is me exposing the hell out of my age. I don't care what anyone thinks. I was actually at a show where he was kind of like trolling. He was kind of I call it like the troll effect where he was just like he picked up a mic, and I don't think this is recorded. He picked up a mic and he was like, "Hey, I'm in Philly. Thank God. The only time that I'll be back here is when I have the title on my belt." Like he was already predicting he was going to WWE. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't know. They were like, he was playing the heel very well, but he was actually having these really good, like, end of tier matches with Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
He had tag teamed with a lot of people. Like him and Cole Cabana weren't tag teaming as much back then, but they were like still coming together. Like Cole Cabana would still be in the ringside on the attack, that type of thing. Um, it was just like a really interesting time, like a lot of talent that a lot of people know then. Like I remember when Jay Lethal was a big deal back then when he was there, and it was just like a really fun time. Like I've not been to one bad Ring of Honor show. The another good Ring of Honor show that I went to was I remember experiencing the who the heck is this El Jericho guy and why is he so good in the ring? Who we'd also known as like Sami Zayn back then. But the way that people loved him because I don't, it was just like that same spark. Like the way people love him now is the same way they loved him then, which makes me so excited about him being tag team champions with Kevin Owens right now, because that was like the series of the summer. And then you had like Tyler Black, who's there, we all know about, Seth Rollins. And it's just like a good crop of talent from Ring of Honor that was just like, I would turn into WWE and I'd be like, what is this? Okay, whatever. I'm going to a Ring of Honor show later, so this stuff is like, meh. But a lot of people like, I would say I'm like a silent member of the internet wrestling community, because that was also the age of like hard dirt sheets. So like if you were someone who was bored with WWE content, you were either looking for like backstage news, or you were trying to see like who the heck can possibly come to WWE. That's where it all started. From, in
Yeah.
my opinion, like the wrestleinc.coms and all that, and Tumblr was the biggest thing. Like I was there in the age of Tumblr, for all those who know. Like if you weren't getting your news from the dirt sheets, you were finding out from fans who went to these shows, these independent wrestling shows, and it would end up on Tumblr. So that also, I was a part of all that, but again, I was very quiet, because it was not, I know me and you gonna get into it, because you already understand that it was not the easiest thing being a female wrestling fan. But at the time, like Tumblr and and Twitter and Wrestle Inc. and all the dirt sheets were kind of like okay, this is my quiet time. So
Yeah, that's insane to really think about, because it's so funny you're talking about the transition time of when those superstars from Ring of Honor were going
mhm.
to WWE. It's so insane to think about, because I believe me and my daddy were having a conversation about AJ Styles when he was fighting Seth
God.
Rollins for the title this past weekend,
Mhm.
and how a long time ago he even said in interviews that he felt like WWE wouldn't accept a person like him. But then you
Yeah.
had somebody like CM Punk, who sort of came in and sort of knocked down the door for people like Bryan Danielson and a Kevin
Mhm.
Owens and a Sami Zayn to be, on top the way that they are. And they don't necessarily fit like the aesthetic of what a superstar used to be, kind of like the
Right.
big buff people and stuff like that. No shade to those people, because, it takes a lot, to build that type of body and that type of athleticism, but everybody isn't that way. And I really feel like Ring of Honor really is a huge reason as to why wrestling does look the way that it looks now, and why even places like NXT exist too the way that it does. Even though of course it started as FCW, it did transition into NXT, where you saw people like Seth Rollins and like Kevin and Sammy, get exposed to us on the WWE side. And like I
Mhm.
said, like for me, I was only watching, the WCWs and the WWEs at first, not knowing how vast wrestling actually was when it came to the independent stuff. And it was
Mm.
because of CM Punk, that let me know about stuff like this. And I was just like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. This is okay. And
Right.
it's just insane to think about, it's almost like night and day when you think about how wrestling has changed since then. Like when you look at who's on top.
And it's crazy you say that, because like I kind of laugh to myself, because, and this goes back into history of like ECW, right? I actually remember ECW like even before the whole invasion angle had happened, because there were rumblings about it. And like I have family in Philly, so like you would always pass the arena that they were in and just see like lines of people outside. And I'm
Right.
looking and I'm like, what are these people going there to watch? And then like my cousin, and shout out to my cousin Yahweh, because he used to watch ECW heavy, and we didn't realize the connection until we got like older. And he was like, dude, you have to understand, like the stuff that WWE wished they could do in the Attitude Era was happening in ECW way before people knew about the invasion. And he was showing me like
Yeah.
all these clips of all these radical things that were happening, and people so crapped on the ECW, right? Like a lot of people, like Jerry King Lawler hated it, a lot of people hated it. Fast forward, it quiets down, and the same like stuff is happening in Ring of Honor little by little, but people are obsessed with Ring of Honor now, because like remember, we're in a transitional point to where nothing was left except for WWE. Like ECW's gone, WCW's gone, a whole lot of the territories have been taken and brought in to literally one big focal, which is WWE. And so when Ring of Honor starts showing back up, and you hear about OVW being like the Midwest's solution, like basically the start of, I call it NXT. And then you also hear about FCW, which was kind of like Makeshift created, but also a great way to like bring back that feel of what Ring of Honor really is. That's what I always looked at FCW. When you heard about FCW show and you look the quality and everything, you're like, okay, this reminds me of like a Ring of Honor show. Like it reminds me of an OVW show, because the way it was set up and everything was that. So people try to get away from the image, or the way that the territories and everything traveled, but then they were slowly bringing it back up. So like Ring of Honor was kind of like my FCW. And then you just to hear the excitement of, okay, and it's sad because all three of those companies don't get the much credit that they deserve at all, because it's like, no, at the back then everybody was like, we're gonna watch a WWE and that's it. But it's like, well, no, you like, can we get something else over here? Like, I'm so happy that we're finally, I want to say, we're back to territory normalcy, because you've been up here in New York. The New York wrestling scene is always going to be something that's completely different from, like, say something in St. Louis, or say something in, like, I know Louisville is back up on the map. I know Miami is trying to get back on the map. Even, let's go out of countries. California has its own like thing going on. Puerto Rico has its own thing going on. Mexico is on the hugest rise. So that's, I think, what makes it exciting for me is like, it's not only a WWE thing anymore, it's a wrestling thing now. So whereas, like, again, the only thing I had to watch was SmackDown, and I discovered this little show happening, this one-time show that people were making a big deal in Philly, and now it's like more options now. So I wish these like things would get more credit. Like this, it takes something small to make something big. And so you wouldn't have Tyler Black if it wasn't for Ring of Honor. You wouldn't have CM Punk if it wasn't for Ring of Honor. You wouldn't have, like, even, let's go further, you wouldn't have Trinity if it wasn't for FCW. Like, WWE contract or not, you wouldn't have Sasha Banks if it wasn't for her going up and down California, being Mercedes. So it's just all these things that I always try to appreciate when I'm watching WWE. It's like, okay, it's not just to say, oh, I knew this person was an independent circuit. I'm like, look at where we are now. So where it's not like they have to sit here and make makeshift talent. It's, listen, this person has a buzz, but we can make them a superstar. Let's roll with that type of thing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So was there ever a point, while you did mention that there was a hiatus that you took, but before you took that hiatus, it seemed like you were incredibly passionate about it, and you're very passionate about it now, clearly. So was there ever a point where someone tried to give you a hard time, or someone tried to bully you because you were a wrestling fan?
Gotta take a sip of water before this. Hold on.
Uh-oh. And it's the smart water too.
That alkaline 5.9 point, is it 9.5? Oh yeah, with antioxidants too. I had to make sure. And I'm gonna be as nice about this as humanly possible. It wasn't so much the people from the outside. It wasn't so much like my family knew. Like if I was if I was in the house on a Friday night, my mother would joke around and be like, "Oh, okay, you're still watching wrestling?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then like you get the breeze by of like my mother going, "Oh God, like why is he getting beat up so hard? Like don't he know?" Like she watched Jeff Hardy jump from the Titanatron at one point, and she was like, "Why is he jumping so high?" So shout outs to moms for getting it. And it wasn't so much my friends, because again, I have friends that were just like, "Oh, you're going to watch people like beat each other up? Cool. I want to get in the fray." That was never the issue. The biggest issue came from people that you would think would be excited that you've entered the community. And I think you've gotten it before, that are just like, "Well, what do you know?" Like, and it's so bad. I've had to defend myself in a silent matter when I talk about something, but it's just like you get attacked by those people who think that you don't know anything. Like it's just like like I say I'm a fan of Lita, and they'll ask me like, what was the very first place that she wrestled? if I don't say like the exact location of like where in Mexico that she trained or who trained her, like what teacher at Howie Funk School or Ace Steel's Wrestling trained her, like if I don't do that, it gets really ugly. And it's like, it got to a point where it was like, I was excited about the whole Divas era thing happening because it was like, again, it wasn't that many women. We had gotten spoiled by the Jazz, and I was a big fan of Jazz, Ivory, Jacqueline, and Trish, and Lita at that point. And then you had the Divas coming in. So I was like, okay, now they have women that could both do wrestling and do, you know, modeling and be pretty and be successful. Like I wanted Michelle McCool to win the Diva Search so freaking bad. It like made me so upset that she didn't get to the finals. Like no shade on Christy Hemme, but it was just like, no, Michelle McCool had that. Like she had it. She had the total package to me. You know what I mean? But it was just like, again, we're in the age of internet where like you go and you see this stuff online and it could get really discouraging. Like I'm the type of person that is just like, if I don't like something, I tune it out real quick. Like if I don't like how you like you're coming at something with an unpositive approach or unlike let's look at this way and this way type way, I'm tuning you out. So like just seeing all the stuff that was going on with the internet community, with a lot of things that happened, like it ranged from like the way that they were talking about women on the platform to how people were treating Lita. It was just like a lot of things that just started slowly dismotivating me. And it's sad to say it was dismotivating me because it was like a really exciting time to be a woman. Like the first time I ever got to like actually be able to find a way to watch Raw was Trish and Lita's main event match. So it was just like, at the same time, I should be excited. But then again, you get on the internet and you see all these negative things. And then I have to hear from the people that are fans of it as you get older. They expect you to be like the Merriam-Webster of wrestling, which I'm
Right.
not. I will admit it. There are some things that I get fact checked on. There are some things I'm glad to be fact checked on. Like if say, for example, we just talked about Ring of Honor. If I've never gotten to see like Mike Bennett wrestle and they tell me, well, he used to wrestle Ring of Honor a lot, I can go, okay, well, he has. I've seen the footage, but I just was not there. So but then there's people that just take it to the extreme. Like they have to be the end all be all. And again, I'm so turned off from that. And also, if you haven't met me, those who know me know I got a smart ass mouth. So like I'm a type of person that I will literally annihilate you with words. Like the Taurus in me will literally have to clear her throat and like find a ways to bring you back down to the ground. So in order for me to prevent doing that in this type of space and instead have a better energy, I was like, I'm just gonna take a fall back. Like let me just do what I have to do. I was trying to get into like a real expensive college. I was trying to get into NYU at the time. So all my focus at that time too was just focus on being in college, and I could do whatever I want, whenever I want, say whatever I want. And just wrestling just happened to take like that little back burner. But again, it was always me tuning in little by little. Like when I heard CM Punk had got signed, I was like, okay, there's no way for us to watch OVW here in New Jersey unless you stay up till like 3 a.m. So it's like, okay, obviously if I catch that, I catch that. And then like WrestleMania every once in a while, I'll look at the card and I'm like, oh, who's on it? Like I tuned in for Trisha's last match. I tuned in for all these things, these great things that were happening. So it was like, okay, I was in and I was out. I wasn't as passionate. But again, if it wasn't for like independent wrestling and going to these shows and seeing all these things happening, especially with women, mostly with women, I would have never gotten back into it. And then I also have to give my college friends credit where it's due because they were just kind of like, no, we're going to watch this, we're going to watch that. Like Jersey used to have like these small wrestling parties, and we're talking small, like back of the like restaurant wrestling, like that one TV in the back that would show it. And then you went home. And then suddenly WrestleMania came to New Jersey for the first time, to MetLife.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends were like, no, we're going. And I'm like, no, it rains in New Jersey. Who's going to go to WrestleMania? But it ended up being one of the best decisions I ever made. I got a cold the next day. It was the best cold that I ever got. I was in the Izon Center. Shout out to the Izon Center. Rest in heavenly peace, because it was the last like big wrestling show in Izon where I watched Dolph Ziggler cash in his Money in the Bank. And people, we New Yorkers love us some Dolph
Oh,
Ziggler. We love him. Like we like us some Dolph Ziggler. Nothing more, nothing less. So it was a good treat to watch that, and then it just like kind of snowballed. Fast forward, I believe it's like the next 2 years or so. So you guys all know Patricia. I call her Pretty P, aka Queen PR of those wrestling girls. She hits me up and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, nothing." I was like, "I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to watch WrestleMania because, again, I don't have cable. I'm not paying for that crap." And I was somebody who, like, literally watched it by herself the year before. And she was like, "Oh, no, you should come out to New York. They're doing, like, these wrestling viewing parties at this bar called Legends. And it's hosted by this podcast called the Jobbersters Podcast." And I'm like, "There's wrestling podcasts?" So I'm just like, processing all the information. So you had me at bar, you had me at wrestling, you also had me at wrestling podcast. And then
right.
anytime to hang out with my friend Patricia is a great time. She's one of my bestest friends, to be honest. So anytime to hang out with her is a great time. So easily I'm like, all right, you got me. I'm influenced. I'm going. So I show up at this bar and I'm looking at this bar. I'm like, this place is huge. And all these people are like packed in. And she comes downstairs and she gets me and we all go upstairs. And I still have the picture to this day because it was a really good night. And I ended up meeting all these amazing people that are just like, they're just as excited as I am to watch WrestleMania happen. And they're just like really into it. And it was the WrestleMania where Kofi Kingston had won the championship, because that year I couldn't go to WrestleMania because it's like, listen, it's too far. I'm not like, there's too much money. Like the homegirl was broke. So, but to be like across the river, I had to go across the river for something that was already happening like 30 minutes away from me. So it was like, okay, it's a win's a win, you know? But to be in a room with all these people that finally got me, like I felt that inner child in me that was excited when no one else was watching it, and then to get to race to school and talk about it with her friends. But except now I don't have to talk about it with my friends at school, because now I have people that I can have a face-to-face conversation with. And then you get people like, I remember somebody had said something to me and I can't remember the girl's name who was sitting next to me, and she told the guy to shut the F up and watch the show. So that automatically I was like, oh, I'm home. Like it was like, now to finally have people who have my back. And it's like, I also know how to carry myself a little bit better, so where I'm like, I could clap back at you, but I can also be smart about it to where you feel like, okay, I should have probably never said that. So now I can handle everything way better because I'm a lot older. My feelings don't get hurt. I just know that my stance. Everybody has their own opinion on things. And that's just have to take it with a grain of salt, because you're not an individual or unique person without having your own point of views, right? So
Right.
that's just me in a nutshell. Like, I want to say, like, if I can give full credit where it's due, wrestling viewing parties kind of brought me back into what I love the most. And then you hear that all these independent shows are happening in New York, and then like, again, credit to Jobber Tears for hosting Jobber Slam. And I find out like literally 32 minutes away from me in Ridgefield Park, there's a mecca for wrestling. So then now I have that. So it felt like the 2000s again. And it feels great to feel like that. So that's
Yeah,
it in a nutshell.
yeah, that's amazing because it's just like when you think about, where you were saying how it seems like you were online in its earliest form
Mm-hmm.
of wrestling media like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
can only imagine having to go through that. It's almost like what we go through now, except it's like minus a little bit.
Right.
And you have people, constantly, giving their opinions about things, and then they think that they're always right. And then if
Right.
you come in and if you're, and like I was talking about earlier, with someone else, it's just like, oh well, it's a male dominated sport. And with it being a male dominated sport, the fandom is sort of male dominated too. And if there's this woman here who's trying to speak out, it's like they can either, accept it or they lash out in a very negative way. And I have gotten that before, but not in the sense of someone was thinking that I didn't know. what I was talking about, but they were coming at me in the sense that I just brought up an idea,
Right.
in a fun way, and then they felt like they felt the need to come in and say something as an expert and talk about all the ways of which it was a bad idea, and went on to attack me and how I'm only going to have so few followers and so few listeners to my podcast. But then you fast forward 2 years later and look at me and where.
Yeah, like looking
So
at your
I
interview
mean, it's
with
it's
Teddy Long, I was just like, oh, that's the dream. Like I was looking at all your interviews and I'm like, she literally has interviewed everybody that I would like. I didn't even want to interview you. I just want to sit down and talk shit. Like I just want to sit down and just like talk with you. Like I don't want to like we don't gotta record nothing. We could just like we can go get like a tea or coffee or like a hard like brew and just talk. Like and you've done it. So it's just like looking at people like you who've had this platform and those wrestling girls and black wrestling and black announce all the people that I can think of that I follow that just go after it and they don't mind saying what they have to say and they don't care about who's hearing it, who's not. It's just like inspirational. And that's more of the draw that I have to watch and be excited to the point where like P's like, oh, we're gonna do this thing on Wednesdays where we just talk. We don't even have to talk about what happened on Raw, what happened on SmackDown. Let's just try and interact with people as much as possible. And I'm like, you get me a mic and a camera and a chance to talk to people, I'm there. So it's just like all of you are inspirational. So this is the type of era where I wish I had, like I said, with the age of Tumblr and everything. This is what I wish I had back then because I guarantee you, if I had this, I would have never felt like I needed to just push myself back. Like I probably would have had people like coming for my defense on Tumblr, like making sure that all these people got like called out the old fashioned way. So it just feels great now. It feels much better now to be in this space. It gets murky a
oh
little
yeah.
bit sometimes. But I like I said, I now know how I'm gonna handle it. Like I know how block works. Like blockity block,
Mhm.
block, block. So now we're good.
Yeah, you have to be healthy and take care of yourself, in that way and know who's good for you and who's not good for you.
Hmm.
And definitely having a wrestling community full of people who are in your corner definitely does help. And in the moments where you're frustrated, you kind of just want to rah, and just let stuff out. It's good to have people like that who will listen. And it's clear that you found that, even with you going to WrestleMania in New Jersey, which was a really cool WrestleMania, I remember.
Oh yeah.
And then seeing Dolph Ziggler in that cash in, like, I have a specific memory attached to that. Me and my boyfriend were long distance at the time, and he was on the phone with me when it was happening, and he loved him some Dolph Ziggler.
Oh
So
my
he
god.
lost his mind on the phone, screaming like, ah, like he just lost it. So going through all of that and then finding, legends and finding your tribe and stuff like that, it's a beautiful thing. And then the friendship that you have with Queen PR, who I admire, along with Krista B, it's just an amazing thing. And now with your platform and with other things, that there are certain things that are worthy of your attention and there are other things that
Right.
aren't. And it's good that that you've learned that. I'm still learning it, and all of the above. But we're here and we're learning. So in learning more about you, and your growth as a wrestling fan or just as a person, period, when did you decide that you were going to, join the space and actually start um interacting with people in the wrestling space as you have? Because I've seen you all do those wrestling girls and other shows, and then you also have your own platform on TikTok and stuff. Like, when did you decide you were going to use your voice more often to lend to this wrestling space?
Then I say I don't even remember, to be quite honest with you. I don't remember when. I just felt like I had a sense of like I like to talk. In case you haven't noticed in like the last 30 minutes we've been talking.
Yeah,
Um
I get it. I like to
I,
talk too, so I get
I
it.
love to talk. But what's more important is that I can only really talk if I get the sense that we're having a conversation because you want to be heard. Like I'm a very, as much as like talking, it's so hard sometimes for me to listen. Like I just grasp the importance of listening to something before speaking. So in an exercise to myself, I decided, you know what? we're going to do a lot more listening and a lot more watching before we keep even opening our mouths. But then I get into a space where people are asking me these questions that I've never been asked before. Brian H. Waters is like the best at snapping me with a question that even I didn't know I had the answer to. And I'm God, how do you freaking do that every time? And it's just like, well, damn, now I got to come up with like a good formulated answer because I can't sound horrible and I can't sound weird. But at the same time, I know what I got to say is going to be great no matter what I say it. And I didn't realize all the things that I was saying people could relate, which I guess is the power of just being your authentic self.
Right.
Like there's such a power in it, and that's why I say I'm always careful because like it also comes with the level of energy. I have good rapport and good speech and good debate with people who give me good energy. And when the energy starts getting constructive, I can be constructive with you. Like I believe in the full power to agree to disagree. Like if you
Right.
don't like, for example, if you don't think that like Candice Michelle should have been Divas champion, but I think she should have been women's champion. Me and you could agree to disagree because we're gonna see two different sides. What I can't get with and what I will never get with is if I'm agreeing to disagree with you, but you're still stuck on the fact that I have to agree with you, or what I'm saying is absolutely the most disagreeable thing you could ever hear. It's like that's where I'm like, no,
Right.
nah. I'm just like block. So with that though, I'm somebody who hasn't been in the most positive of spaces even before wrestling. So positivity has always been the best thing for me to keep in line. But again, that's where you have to also learn like there's going to be people that also don't agree with you. And that's where it's like, okay, it makes everything much more interesting because now it's like, all right, well, I always thought this way. Let's hear it from somebody who didn't think this way. And then I start hearing from the sides of the people who didn't think that way. And I'm like, wow, this puts me also to learn something in a completely different perspective because we're all, like I said, we're on the visuals and we're not always going to agree to, we're not always going to agree on the same thing. But like finding a way to learn from what somebody else can see, I think is the most powerful thing that makes us humans. And I like that type of chemistry. So when it comes to like me, you may not even agree on certain things that I say on this podcast. That's fine. But I just want to know, like, I'm always gonna know why. I'm always gonna want to know what brought you to that point. And I'm also gonna want to know like how does it make you feel? We cover those three things, whether I agree on it or not. Again, it was like, all right, we can agree to disagree. Or you know what? Now I can see your point of view. That type of
Right.
thing. So
Yeah, and it's really good that you were able to do that because having constructive, conversations with people or fun conversations with people when it comes to wrestling is always a fun thing. Like even before I started, my own platform with this show, like I love talking to people about wrestling and certain things like outside of wrestling events, here in the state and stuff. Like who's your favorite this person or why did you like this part of the show? Why didn't you like this part of the show? Let me see that belt, like that's the kind of stuff that I like to engage with when it comes to that, like and when it's positive because at the end of the day we're all here because we love the same thing. And it doesn't have to, divulge into, well, I agree with this and if you don't then you're dumb and all this other stuff. Like
I know, yeah,
it doesn't have to turn into that. Like it can just be okay, let's agree to disagree like you say, like you said, and just understand that you have the right to feel how you feel because whatever brought you to that conclusion is very much valid to your life, but and
right,
it doesn't have to turn into that. And then it also doesn't have to turn into us, gatekeeping information either.
right.
Like if somebody doesn't know a whole lot about wrestling, how else are they gonna get further into it if you're out here talking about how they should know this and yada yada yada? No, like you should have an inviting presence to it.
And
And
it's funny.
yeah,
It's so funny you say that because like the word gatekeeping is just like, how can you gatekeep something that's in your face so much? Like right now, especially with the growth of AEW, you have no excuse not to know what's going on. If you don't know what's going on in the wrestling community, especially like even before Endeavor, this deal with WWE happened and AEW was going on, it was so in your face with wrestling being now a part of mainstream media, like these wrestlers becoming actors and these wrestlers, going off and starting their own podcasts and going on radio shows and all that. Like it's so in your face. Do we really have the power to gatekeep anything? No. I
No.
I like somebody had said that to me when, the whole Trinity thing went down when she decided to go to Impact, and I was just like, "Oh good, now y'all want to watch Impact?" And it kind of made like a joke of it, like, "Oh, now y'all want to watch," because let's be real, like I thought TNA, like if we talking about like not having access to cable, TNA used to Impact used to show on my nine at like 4 in the morning. So if you stayed up till 4 in the morning before like a gospel infomercial, you were getting the recap of whatever was shown on cable TV. So I always knew about it. So like I'm like, well, all the people that know me know, or people that watched TNA back when it was like in its glory days, they know that TNA been lit. So like for Trinity to go there is not a big deal just because it's not as like big. The company has suffered like a main down, but the knockouts is where it's at. So I'm just like, oh, now y'all want to watch. Like, okay, people were just like, I know, right? Like, it's been here. I can't believe people are surprised at Impact, but you always got that one person that's just like, oh, don't do that, don't gatekeep. And I'm like, this is where the smart mouth comes in me. I'm like, okay, I'm rich enough to buy a ticket to Impact, but again, I'm too poor to have the money and influence to keep you from watching Impact. And last I checked, gatekeeping is using your power, your money, or your influence to keep somebody away from something. I don't have that much money. Impact's on a cable television network that I don't own. All these things, you think that's the definition of gatekeeping? I'm sorry, but Merriam-Webster will tell you that's not what I'm doing. Um, but again, you get those people that are just like, you're doing this and you're trying to make people not watch the product. You know how many people were up waiting for Trinity to come online? Block. Like, what are you talking about? So that I'm just like, if it's something that it's not to block because I know I'm not going to win. It was just like, okay, I'm not going to respond to this anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to send you the definition of gatekeeping. And I'm just going to be like, listen, if you felt like I was gatekeeping, just, read the definition before you use words like that, because this is not a community. You can't gatekeep wrestling anymore. Like, I'm sorry. It's just a case. It's not possible. You know what I mean? Like, it's not possible for me to tell you who Roman Reigns is and think, well, you can't watch WWE now because I just told you who Roman Reigns is and you wasn't there when he was champion since day one.
Yeah, that's not fair.
I can't do that. I don't have the money nor the power nor the influence of it. And plus, there are more of people who love Roman Reigns who will gladly sit you down and tell you how amazing he is, more
Yes.
than there is just little old me that says, "Oh, now you want to like." There's no way. So like, even like that word gatekeeping, I'm just like, it's not. It's not possible. It's not real. That means if you don't know who these people are, that means you're just deciding not to watch them. That has nothing to do with
Right.
me gatekeeping anybody, because again, don't have the power, don't have that much money, and I don't have that much influence to do that. Like, so that was a
Yeah.
little rant, but it's just like, I just don't. If it's something that I definitely cannot agree on, is that like gatekeeping is just not a thing. If you don't want to watch, you don't want to watch. You don't enjoy a person, you don't enjoy a person, and let's just everybody be in their own opinion, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. But, in talking about you and your growth as a wrestling fan, and your growth as a content creator, like, what, since I hadn't really, I believe by the time Mercedes and Trinity had left, we hadn't met yet.
Hmm.
So I want to ask you, as a black woman, how exactly are you feeling about that evolution to them leaving and them becoming exactly who they are now and feeling more realized, in where they are now with Trinity at Impact and with Mercedes at New Japan and Stardom? Like, how has that been for you?
I can relate to it. Like, I'm always going to have a spot for those women, as far as like I get it. Like, a lot of people want to sit there and be pissed at two people that went into a room and literally demanded that they be treated or looked at a certain way. Where, as someone who is a content creator, that's been my that's been my journey ever since I started content creating. Like, it makes no sense that even now I've gotten really heavy into like content creating, and I've been now getting these deals as to where like I'm looking at the optics of like, why am I not being treated this way as opposed to this person? And it's hard not to do that. But I've had people who have motivated me that no matter what, I still should put my foot in the ring, because I'm just as entertaining and I'm just as funny and I'm just as creative as the next person sitting next to me. Don't let anything distract me or discourage me. And while it does get hard, like I said, sometimes not to be distracted, I just have to keep in mind, like, I'm fighting for something that's worth it for me. If I don't keep that vision in mind, I'm doing all this for nothing. So when that whole thing happened, I felt it on two specs. One, I'm somebody who left a corporate position or a full-time position because I felt like I wasn't valued for my because I'm somebody who's been, I could be told I'm intelligent all day and feel I'm intelligent, but if you don't treat me like I'm intelligent, I'm gonna look at you like, so you were just blowing smoke. And I don't feel right being around you. You've now made it seem like I'm only intelligent in this use, and I don't believe in that. I feel like I'm all or nothing. I'm intelligent 24/7, 365. There's ways that my brain works on aspects of like, this is how it works out. And if you don't have a viable solution for me and where it's not going to work out, I'm just going to execute the plan. So when they left, and when I hear the rumblings of how they left, I'm like, I felt the exact same way. And it had nothing to do with being a women's a tag team champion. It just felt like a normal day in the office as an African American woman trying to be use her intelligence to get to somewhere in life, and then people telling you, oh, because these specs that you have, you can't be in that room. I felt that. So for me, for them to leave, I was like, more power to them. Like, that's going to benefit them in the long run. And then also, the second thing I felt was like, do they not know who they lost? Like, you didn't just lose two, one chicken wing without a leg and one chicken without a foot. You literally lost the whole chicken. You lost the whole, like, what do they say? You didn't lose parts of the cow. You lost the whole cow. In my
Right.
opinion, you didn't lose like parts. You didn't lose one part of the package. You lost entire packages of people. And so I knew they would end up where they wanted to go, because I heard interviews on Mercedes' side to where she was like, I'm not the type of person that's just gonna sit down and not do my dreams. Like, I felt like she, if not Japan, she was gonna end up doing her own thing or starting her own company even. So I felt like she's gonna be fine with Trinity. I just felt like they really dropped the ball on her because she was somebody that was there since day one. I was excited from her since FCW. So I was like, I know for a fact she's gonna kill it wherever she goes. And it's just about that. Like I said, if I feel like my talents are not appreciated in one space, it's kind of like people call it like a checkout, to where it's like, all right, I gotta now pull the wheel and see if I'm really needed here, am I not needed here? Like, and then my creativity starts to not be given to you, as far as like, I'm not gonna sit here and put all my energy into something if I'm not appreciated a certain way. It sounds selfish, but at the same time, think of how much we have to fight. Like, even you think of how much you have to fight to even get a sit down with somebody in a room, over people that are told they're better than you, or they think they're better than you, or they think they have all these credentials because they've interviewed one person, they think they have the right to step on you, but you still get that interview. Like, I feel like that's where it needs to be. Like, I'm gonna, like, I know I'm not like somebody who's been in the wrestling space that long, or I know I'm not like a Rosenberg, or like a, even for example, or you, or those wrestling girls. But it's like, I also have something to say, and I also have questions, and I also love to talk about it. I feel like I also deserve to be in the room when you
Right.
put me in the room, and I'm gonna shine whether you think I deserve to shine or not. And these were two ladies that went in there, and they're like, we could take a title and we can make it really big if you let us. And people were basically telling them like, well, you have the title, be good enough with that. Like, why do we always have to settle? And that's the third thing. I don't settle for nothing. Like, if something doesn't work out for me, I'm gonna go back to the drawing board, figure out how it's gonna work out for me, and then go back and execute that plan. I don't believe in, you should just take what you have and run with it. I'm always gonna find a way to excel and be my better self. And these women were basically being told, well, no, like shut up and it's almost like a version of shut up and dribble. Like I hated
Right.
that. Like people were so pissed about that comment for the basketball players for men, but why is it when two women did it, it was like, oh, they're ungrateful and this and that. They're basically told to shut up and wrestle. So you're mad at them because they decided that they weren't going to shut up and wrestle? Like, make it make
Right.
sense. I'm not the type of person that's just like, if something doesn't make sense, if you're telling me to drink, you know, from the river instead of drinking smart water, and I'm like, well, I feel like the smart water is healthy. You're like, it doesn't matter. You're getting water. Just shut up and drink. That's not acceptable, and it should never be acceptable to anybody, regardless of race, gender, sexuality. It shouldn't be acceptable. Like, you shouldn't just shut up and do it. Like, if something makes you uncomfortable, say something. If you felt like, and I've had people say this to me, and I'm just like, so you're telling me basically I should just speak up? And they're like, right, speak up. And then I spoke up and it felt amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just like for them, I would, in that moment, I felt proud of them. Again, I had to tune out the internet because people were just like coming up with these like literate illiterate excuses as to why they should just accept it. And it's like, y'all realize when they were champions, they only had 3 matches as tag team champions, right? Like that was the stuff they were trying to tell people, and you guys are telling them that they should just appreciate something like that, where if it was somebody else that was barely defending the championship, you blow smoke up their ass. So it's just like, it's because it's them, right? It has to be. It's no other way. There's no other excuse. It's just because it's them. I was proud of them all around the board. I'm happy where they're at. Listen, I'm going to tell people, listen, you should have been tuning into Impact a while ago, but now that Trinity's there, it's cool. Let's come on every Wednesday and talk about it and have a party about it. I'm with it. Like Trinity is probably going to be in New Jersey pretty soon because New Japan Pro Wrestling is rumored to come over here. Listen, if you
Yeah.
want to come and pregame in the backyard and then we all go together, I'm with it. But let's just keep it 100. Be proud of these women for standing up, and it should be inspirational to a lot of people. It should be really inspirational to a lot of people because we don't get the chance to speak up and then do something about it ever. And it's just like, as something I advocate all day. I'm like, I'm going to tell you something and you're either going to take it or you're going to leave it, but you're never going to tell me it doesn't matter. That's what you're
Right.
never going to be allowed to do ever.
Right. And I absolutely agree with that, because it's just like at that time it felt like a whirlwind, first of all.
Mhm.
If you were working in media like that day, I just so happened to not go to work to my regular job that day. And then all of that was just a huge whirlwind of what do you think about this? Da, 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 da. It was a lot.
It's like, it was just
But
like,
like it was the biggest thing going, and then it hit me out of nowhere because I didn't even watch Raw that night, and I went to sleep early, and then woke up, and then all hell was breaking loose. So
oh,
you can only
yeah.
imagine how I felt. But either way, it was just ever since it unfolded, watching them succeed. Has been, a great blessing because I've always, loved them and saw it for them regardless. So as much as my heart was broken, because I love the idea of seeing them two be champion and also Bianca be champion, like all three of them right there together.
Right. And
Like
then you
that
had Jay
aesthetic,
like win
right? You had
in my
all of that, and
hometown
then
right
it just
after.
yeah, and then it was gone. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be gone. I mean, their magic lives within them. It's not the other way around. So to see
Exactly.
them turn it around, and take their talents elsewhere and then turn out to be and turn out to be exactly as excellent as we knew that they were and take it elsewhere has just been an amazing thing. And hopefully, in the future it'll show that us as black women, deserve to have our voices heard and our voices valued in these large platforms like this, in and out of wrestling and just in corporate stuff, period. And I'm sorry that you went through that in the corporate space, but I am glad that you've
Mm.
risen above that and found your own voice. And in
Yeah.
finding your own voice, I do want to ask you, like, outside of wrestling, you do have your own organization called the Well Minority. And in using your voice and your platform for mental health for brown and black people, what was your inspiration in creating that, and what has been the most rewarding experience that you've had from that?
So right now, when I started, I talk about it a lot. As far as like, again, we're trailing back to somebody who always was taught to have a game plan, execute said game plan, and have it be one of the best game plans we have out there. And sometimes life situations happen where that does not go according to plan. And I'm a full advocate in that there are a lot of things I could sit here and blame people that came into my life. I could sit here and blame myself, but at the end of the day, it became more or less of I'm gonna blame it on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'm like, you know what can I do about A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Like, do I sit here and panic that things didn't work out from work, or do I sit here, take a breather, shut work off, go into my own mind control state, and realize, you know what, today was a bad day. We can always try again tomorrow. Let's do this so that it doesn't happen again. And it was very hard for me to do it at first. I'm somebody that's very emotional. Um I tend to react to things as they happen. So if something hurts me, it's gonna hurt me. Like there's nothing you could say or do to me that's gonna make it at that moment. But what I had to learn to do as far as like my mental health goes, if something's continuously hurting me, I had to learn to not only it's not just about getting away from it. You also have to learn about the after effects of how it made you feel. Because it's gonna make you feel the type of way. If it's something that's traumatic, it's not a physical injury, but there's also mental injury. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, which is what made me start the Well Minority like the not podcast yet, coming soon. Made me start the Well Minority as a fact. It was just like I was trying to seek help and getting out and getting over my emotional traumas, and it was just not there for me. Like it was like I spent so much money on therapists that were just like, you have to get up and do this and do that and blah blah. And I'm like, okay, but do you really understand where I'm coming from as a African American woman going through this thing? And I had 3 therapists that were just like, well, I had one therapist tell me they don't see that as the issue when clearly it was the
Oh.
issue. I had another therapist telling me it was all in my head, basically,
Mm.
and that here are 5,000 different ways to overcome it, which does not help everybody. It did not help me in the end because it was getting out of a toxic situationship. um it was trying to learn to distance myself from that situationship that was hurting me, and that person was kind of just trying to put, and the third one was trying to blow smoke up my ass again and trying to tell me like, oh, maybe you should just try and make it work. And it's like, no, I can't make it work if I'm trying to get out of it. And I land on my 4th therapist, who surprisingly, she's not African American, she's actually Latino. And she actually was the first therapist that was like, have you ever looked at something this way? Have you ever looked something that way? And she didn't just tell me that I should just do this, do that to get healthy. She more put the ball on my court. Well, you can go home and think of it this way. If you did it this way, or if you did it this way, think about how it's going to affect you and then act on that. And it helped me open up so many things, not only to like, this is how I want my therapist to talk to me, or how I want a life coach to help me. But like, imagine how many people have struggled with getting mental health the same way I just struggled going through 4 different people who did not help me at all. But finding that one person that did after all this, like, it must be frustrating. So when I decided to start the Well Minority, it was going to be full on like ways of putting out how people can get help the nonprofit way, or people, there's not everybody that can afford therapy, right?
Right.
Finding ways that they can read books, how to do this and who that. But then slowly but surely, as I started talking about the Well Minority, I started getting my inbox flooded with a bunch of people that were like, hey, I heard you talk about the Well Minority. Is there anything for me in New York? Or is there anything for me out in like, I get asked about Alabama. I get asked about Florida. I get asked about all these places. They're like, where can I go? And so I took my time and finding all these resources for them. And then there's some times where I get it, like I'll look for this resource and people will come back to me and go, oh, that didn't work. Do you have anything else? I'm like, wait, this is supposed to be for us. How is it not working? So then that makes me deep dive into more. And I'm very thankful to this, if not only the wrestling community, but to my own community, because I even have people from the wrestling space that were like, hey, I have this friend who actually is a life coach, and they're really here to help people. Here's their information, and I'll add them and I'll come up with a game plan to spotlight them, which is what is going when everything comes back. And when I finally get everything back to the way it's supposed to be and clear my inbox, I'm going to start doing that, start highlighting the people in our community that are doing the work, that understand how we feel. Like, there's a lot of Black therapists that message me and they're like, hey, if you know anybody that needs help, I'm actually available. Like, here are my office hours. Here I do, like, hey, are you doing any substance abuse work? I host a substance abuse space that's here, or I'm on Zoom, I'm available, blah, blah, blah. So the outpour is what pushed me to keep going, because honestly, the wall minority was going to be literally just that. I was going to list books that relate to Black mental health and list these nonprofits that, but it became so much more. Like, I've actually talked somebody out of ending their life recently, and that's what made me like, because at first I was going to stop, I was going to take a break because it's a lot to like remind yourself of where you used to be, because I used to be in that thought process. Like, a situation put me in that thought process where I felt like I don't want to be here no more. Let me just take myself out completely. But then, like, to hear that somebody was like, oh, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working, I'm just gonna like do what I want, I'm just gonna do this. And then just for me to be able to be like, no, you're not doing that. And for me to go back and forth with the person, I'm not gonna mention that person out of respect for them, of course, but just for them to be like, you know what if I tried this? And for me to, all right, maybe therapy is not for you. Do you know anybody that's a life coach? And then to have people come back and be like, this person's a life coach, they're on Zoom, but they help. And then to just keep checking on that person and making sure they're okay. I think that's more important than a bunch of clickbaity clicks on Instagram, or like putting up all this content about like just about eating fruits and berries, because not that shit doesn't work for everybody. Let's be real. Some people need people to talk to. Some people need a community of people that get it. And it's like, if I could be a part of that community that gets it, everything that's supposed to happen, I feel like, will always happen. Like, everything takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, let alone a month or a week. So it just takes time for something like this. Like, it's even gone back to the point where I've contemplating like, hey, maybe I should enter the fray as a life coach, because I feel like, as somebody who likes to talk as much, I'm also somebody who loves to listen. Like, like I said, I try and see everybody's point of view. Not everybody will go through what I've been through, but I want to see how I can help in that space of helping somebody and how I can help somebody. So it's just like a lot of things. Also, this was therapy for me, the wall minority, because it was like I had to maybe say some of these things. Like, I just had a conversation with a friend about why people heal. Like, and I realized that over the years where I say I'm healing and I'm this and I'm that and I'm being single, and it's like, was I really doing this for me, or was I doing it so that I seem better and healthy in front of people that I think matter, if their opinions matter, if I'm healed or not? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, am I really healing because I need to do the internal work for myself and take accountability for all the things that may have caused this trauma to last within me? Or am I just doing it because I want to look fine and look perfect in front of other people? That right there, that work in itself took time, to where it's like, all right, I can't do nothing or post on a wall minority at all until I figure that crap out. Because if I'm just healing for everybody, I'm not really healing. I'm just sticking a band-aid over it and hoping that the blood doesn't run down my arm, when I need to make sure I close this wound. It's very important to close all wounds. Like, you can't stick a band-aid on everything. And I feel like a lot of people do that. Like, they say they're healing and really they're just sticking a band-aid on whatever was hurting them. Like a breakup, you're healing from a breakup. Why? Because you want to make sure that your ex can see that you're thriving? Or do you really want to show your ex that, like, listen, you cut me bad and you did a lot and it's traumatic. So what I'm going to do is, I can care less about what you think. I'm going to do this for me, because I also want to make room for the next person who's not going to cut me the way you cut me. So that, all that stuff and more, I plan on deep diving into it so bad. I have a big announcement coming up as far as like media space and where the page is going. So, but at the end of the day, even if it's just what I've been doing the last few months, which is answering inbox questions and people asking me where they can get resources, if that's what the well minority becomes, that's what it's going to become. Because I'm a big believer in higher powers and God. And I feel like you can always set a plan for something. But if God shows you, well, this way's working, so why don't we do it this way? And you can see it working. Like, I got to answer the call. You know what I mean? I have
Right.
to answer the call.
Right. And with you answering that call, it's abundantly clear you are saving people's lives. Like, because there are so many resources that a lot of people don't even know that, are available. And when it comes to black and brown people, like when it comes to mental health, it's something that we have either just straight up ignored or something that we sort of push off to the side because we try to work it away, and push it away, like Solange said in her song. We try to just push stuff away all the time, but all of those scars are still definitely there, even though you try to, like, cover them up and stuff. So, and when it comes even in wrestling, like, there are a lot of mental health, there've been a lot of people who we've lost when it comes to mental health issues. And I love that you are using your voice for good in that aspect, that even in the wrestling space and outside the wrestling space, you are saving people's lives. And even when it's hard for you, because you can't pour from an empty cup, you take your time and you fill yourself up so that you can fill others up. And that's something that I do admire about you and love about you so much, is the fact that you take your time to, of course, get yourself together. But then after you get yourself together, you help others get themselves together too. And I think that is wonderful, that you're that healing presence in mental health and also in wrestling as well. Like, that's a really good thing. So, moving out of that, and even with everything that you have coming up, on the horizon, like, I'm excited to see how it continues to grow and how it continues to thrive. There, how do you feel about the state of wrestling now and what's good about it and what can be improved on?
I feel like it's back to where I feel like we're finally back to what it used to be. Like as cliche as it sounds, I'm a little biased. I like that there was a Monday Night War. I like the Monday Night Wars. And that's why I say it's biased, because literally we just talked about mental health and fighting. But I like that. I like documentaries about the Monday Night Wars. I just read Nitro, which is talking about Ted Warner's WCW. So I
Mhm.
liked where it came from to where it was like, while it was more about competing with Vince McMahon and his legacy and what he was trying to build, it was also just trying to give an alternative to, like, not everybody was liking the product of WWE. Not everybody was getting the push they deserved in WWE, which is why people left. They went to an exodus. Some people were more greedy about it. A lot of people were just like, no, genuinely, I need the challenge. And if you look, there were also, like, the territories. You had Canada had a territory. Texas had its own thing going on. You had, like I said, Mexico. I feel like the wrestling's always been there. When you hear stories about Puerto Rico with Conan and all that stuff, like, you hear different things were going on everywhere. But then everything kind of came to a close when Vince McMahon started pulling from territories and started pulling territories away, and it just became one big thing. And as cool as it sounds, it's actually boring. Like, like, you literally Thanos the wrestling community. Like, you made, like, it or anything, like, you literally made it like a one-stop shop for wrestling. Like, you took out 50% of the population. We get it. Like, we get it. But, like, is it really that entertaining though? You were trying to make yourselves a sports entertainment company, which they've successfully done. That's fine. But you still have people that miss the good old days. Like, call it nostalgia, but, like, there was nothing wrong with what was anything going on before. Like, it was probably the same politics that's going on back then is going on now. Like, you hear these stories about certain things that are wrong with like independent wrestling companies, or how some people are getting pushed and then some people get pushed and the people that were there before get left behind. It's just the same thing. So it's like, listen, just like fashion, everything repeats itself. Like, the same things that, like, right now, I know that being skinny, like how it was back in the 90s, back when we were younger, is now coming back to fruition. We're halfway done with the BBL era. We're back in our skinny girl era. We're back to, like, flip phones and tied bracelets and all that stuff. Like, we're back on that because everything comes back into rotation. I think that AEW was needed to balance the universe, like to put it on its balance. And then, like I said, we have everything that's going on here in New York. We have some stuff going down still in Texas. You have stuff going down in the South. You got stuff going on in Canada. You got stuff going on in Puerto Rico, Mexico, California. You got the UK now is starting to get a wrestling scene, I'm hearing. So, like, You need that stuff though. You need and like who's WWE gonna keep making factory wrestlers forever? Hell no. They need to pull people from places to tilt the balance so that they can have people who actually know what the hell they're doing and been doing it for a long time. So not to get away from the question, I feel like this is where it needs to be. Like maybe leave it alone. Like let everybody cook in their own restaurant instead of trying to make everybody go to the buffet. So just let
Mm-hmm.
everybody sit where they're at so that everybody has something to be entertained about. Like not everybody's gonna want to watch WWE. It's fine. Not everybody's gonna watch AEW. That's okay. Not everybody's gonna want to watch like Matt Cardona bleed like a stuffed pig at a GCW show. That's fine. Like everybody to each his own. Like just let things be where they're at. Let everybody have where they are. Let everybody enjoy what they want to enjoy. Like if I want to go to WWE one day, I want to go to a House of Glory show the next day. Let me do that. But as a wrestling fan, this is the space that people have been hearing like their uncles or their grandmother or their mother talk about when they
Yes.
used to watch wrestling back home. Like let us have that. Like let us have that in this moment in time. And if it has to go away again, it goes away again. What are you gonna do? But at the same time, I feel like people appreciate this a lot more because now the window and the door is open, even for us as podcasters, or like for the Steph Hardy's, for the Wrestling Podcast of the World, or the Jobbers Tears, or the wrestling wind down, or women's wrestling talk. Like now, there's more of a space for us to finally be included in a space, and the door is breaking open to where like being a podcaster and talking about wrestling at one point was not it. Like you only had one person talking about it, and that was a guy who kept 100 papers in his office. His name is Dave Meltzer, and he put out this little newsletter. And now you have somebody, all right, who else is thinking this way? Like everybody's piquing each other's brains. I feel like this is the perfect balance in the universe. Granted, there's some rotten apples here, but you're gonna have rotten apple. You're gonna have rotten strawberries in a batch of strawberries. You can't avoid that. Either take them out and wash the rest of the strawberries away, or you just pick a different batch of strawberries. That's it.
Right. Absolutely. And it's so funny you brought up, how wrestling now is sort of like how it was back in the day. And it just reminds me of how my grandma, God rest her soul, used to talk about how she would go and sneak out of church, and go to the Boutwell Auditorium and watch wrestling and watch the people, all the OGs of wrestling back in the day, downtown in Birmingham and stuff. And it's just, that's kind of how it is now. Like, everybody can't be Walmart. Everybody can't be, the big places. Everybody can't be the mall. But my thing is, there are these small businesses that can still give you, what you're into and what you love, and just can't necessarily be the big thing all the time, but there's still value in it. And I'm so happy that, there are wrestlers who can find other ways to thrive that way and not
Right.
necessarily feel like they have to go to the big place right now, even though that might be what they're working towards eventually. There's still other places where they can go and they can work and get their reps in and stuff like that and feel like they have a sense of belonging with the fandom that comes to see them. Like, I'll never forget going the first indie show I went to was the first show I ever called action for as a commentator.
Nice.
And yeah, and it was for the Belladonna division, and that was the first
Oh
indie
my
show I'd ever
god.
done. And just seeing wrestling in a contained space with a bunch of people who does love women's wrestling came to see that show was
Mm-hmm.
really, emotional and really good for me, because it's just I had always seen wrestling on the grander scale and on the bigger scale. I'd never seen it on, the small scale, or not even a smaller scale, but just on the scale of independent stuff. And so being a part of that and being exposed to, different women who I hadn't really heard of before, or being exposed to women that I had seen on television before, and now they're here working this event and I'm here working this event too, was just an amazing thing to experience. It's like you see how it grows and grows. And wrestling is a very, vast universe to be a part of, and it
Mm-hmm.
deserves to be that vast again.
It
And
does.
yeah, and people's dreams deserves to be, v- you know pursued in a big way in that way. So I really does hope it stays that way. So to sort of end it, on a fun note, who would you say is your top 5 wrestlers of all time?
Oh my god.
Male, female, or non-binary, and
I
they
put
don't have to be on TV either.
I
But
put
yeah,
my head down because I don't like lists.
it
I
doesn't have to
hate.
be in a specific order.
Does it really?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Oh man. Okay. Oh, I really hate lists. You have no idea. I was not that, but it's just like full disclaimer. I don't like, and people say, "Oh, you can't be Switzerland." Listen, Switzerland is beautiful. First of all, like I don't like forgetting people.
Hmm.
So Jesus Christ, it's gonna be a little hard.
It's okay.
So we're gonna
Take your
go.
time.
You said top 5.
Yes,
Okay, so if I had to pick somebody who's on the up and coming as a favorite is
of
Willow
course.
Nightingale, who we met. She's awesome. If I had to pick someone female wise, Lita will always have a special place in my heart. Jazz will always have a special place in my heart. Male wise, and I don't know who's gonna like me. I really don't care. I am a CM Punk fan. He's my guy. Like I said, Ring of Honor. I'm devoted to that. So that's my guy. And then if I had to pick like a tag team right now, that's like one of my favorites right now. I am a fan of the Street Profits, even though because
Hmm.
those are one of those tag teams that people are gonna be like, well, did you know that Montez? I don't care what Montez was doing before he went to WWE. I like the Street Profits, leave it alone. But I am also a fan of FTR, so that will probably round up my favorites. I'm a huge fan of I'm a huge fan of FTR. The theme music, the aura. People might think differently, but then again, it's just me. And then I am a part. I am like a silent member of the Roman Reigns, the day ones. I stick my finger up religiously. Don't care. I'm a fan. There's nothing you could say to me about him that's wrong. I won't get violent on you because I know there's people that will, but I am a fan. So that's gonna round it up. Like I'm just more of a fan of the sport. So for me to have a list is kind of like I'm gonna give you a choice every single time, but I'm devoted to those people because those are people that kind of broke like a barrier to me that stick out to me. So I like people that stick out to me,
Hmm.
and then
I
I'm
get
gonna
it.
yeah. And then I have to give an honorable mention to Booker T because you talk about grandmothers. So I had a grandmother who's an immigrant. Like she came from Liberia, only knowing one language and a little bit of English, right? So when I used to watch like wrestling, she used to be in the room and she used to root for The Rock and Booker T so hard because obviously, they for us. So
Yes.
one time she's watching like Booker T go up against Test and she's pissed as hell that Test won. And she's like, stupid. Oh, stupid. And so I realized that my grandmother was like paying attention, like my grandmother loved jazz. My grandmother was like, oh, yes, strong woman. Like my grandmother could not speak the best English, but when you put on Booker T and jazz for her, oh, she was rooting for them. She's like, beat him. And then when she used to see Booker T get like pushed down, she's like, no, get up, get up, get up, get up. So like, mind you, this is the like skinniest African lady talking about watching wrestling. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, my grandmother does like what is she reacting to? And I'm realizing what's going on. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, grandma, I'm watching SmackDown. I'm like, can I watch it? And she's like, no, she can't speak.
Do
So
you
I
have the same grandma? Because my grandma did the same thing.
and when
Whenever
I
there was
tell
any
you,
black person on, she was going to root for the black wrestler always. And when I was a kid, I used to not like I understood, but then not fully understood. But now that I'm older, I definitely get it. So it's just like, did we have the same grandma
I
seeing
feel like we did. So and then
like
secondary story that's funny. Remember I don't know if you're familiar with TNA and the X Division.
yeah.
So this is back when Kenny King was like ruling the X Division. And so I was watching X Division match one time and there was a spot where he got yanked off the top rope. And all of a sudden, like again, you see my skinny ass grandmother just stand up and get pissed about it. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, grandma, it's okay. She's like, no, get up. He got to get up. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, rest in peace to my grandma. I miss her so dearly, but it's just like one of those memories I have with her. Like my parents even remember it, and they're like, "Oh, your grandmother used to always root for those people. Like my grandmother used to always root for the people that were for us, and those other people just she was just pissed with them. Like she was not a Test fan. She was not a JBL fan either. She didn't like that he
Oh
turned
no,
on.
mine
She didn't
either.
like. She loved her some Ron, honey. Loved her some Ron Simmons, honey.
Oh,
Whenever he was tagged in, she was excited.
and then don't let my grandmama hear JBL call himself a wrestling god.
Oh my God.
Oh no, not down here in the South. No, not her. Uh-uh. She used to hate that. She was like, "How dare you call yourself a wrestling god? All that blaspheming. Like it's over with." She used to hate that, and I hated it too, because I'm a church girl, so I hated it too. But she used to come out real strong with it, like, nah, like you ain't finna
Yeah.
do that.
Like my grandmother was not for it, and then the rest of the programming for people weren't on there. She wasn't tuning in. It was back to the sewing board. It was back to like braid my hair. But like guaranteed, if she heard like the Rock's theme music, the braiding would stop and she would peek to see who was fighting. Oh, she was not happy about Brock Lesnar either. She was not a Brock Lesnar fan, and it's weird because
Mhm.
I'm a Brock Lesnar fan. Because like I was watching him again during SmackDown, the Ruthless Aggression era, but she was not a when he took that title off of him, child. She was not happy. She was not a Brock Lesnar stan. Should not stand him. She
I
was a Rock
wasn't
fan.
happy either.
Her favorite movie was The Scorpion King. Her second
Mhm.
favorite movie was Walking Tall because he was walking in with the guns and all. Child, I think we had the same grandmother. I really think we did.
Maybe I'm Liberian and just don't know it.
Listen, it's a country that slaves went back. Maybe you are. Maybe
I
we
don't
came
know.
across the coast and met paths somewhere. We got to listen. Our ancestry DNA. I have a discount code. We can figure this out, Steph. I think we can.
Yeah, we can, because I've been wanting to find out for years now. So I need to know. I need to know. But yeah, so thank you for coming on the Hardy Wrestling Podcast.
No, this
And
was
just
fun.
yeah, this was really fun. So is there anything in wrestling specifically that you're excited about that's on the horizon?
I will be attending my. I'll be attending a lot more shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is we finally got our ish together. I'm gonna say that for the YouTube. We want to do a lot more things as far as like enjoying wrestling because I feel like I didn't get a chance to really enjoy being a spectator, being a fan. I just came off of watching my first AEW show. We
Mm-hmm.
went to Full Gear, which was here in Newark,
Mm-hmm.
which was fun. I'm hoping they start bringing more shows back to Jersey. I don't know what's going on, but until then, just expect to see me in a lot more independent wrestling shows. I always talk about the Mecca. If anybody here is from Jersey, please start going to Ridgeville Park. It is a really interesting shows going on over there. The like New York is starting to pick itself back up. Um, Shout out to all my peoples at House of Glory. If you're familiar with House of Glory Wrestling up here, please do attend a show. And just so more and so forth. But until then, you can catch me on Wednesday doing hood rat wrestling things with my hood rat wrestling friends. That's where I'm at. And then of course, I'll do the right thing is coming up. I will be there in attendance. Do the fight thing from Battle Club Pro. I am a big advocate of Battle Club Pro up here. So I will be at that show. Don't be afraid to come up to me and say hi. And drop your Twitter names because if I don't know your real name, I'm not gonna know who you are. And you're gonna walk up to me, I'm gonna be like, who are you? But drop your Twitter name so I know who you are. Or say your Twitter name so we can hug and be cool and have this more in-depth conversation because I'm welcoming. So but yeah, I'm a lot of good things happening for me this year. And I'm not just saying that because I feel it. I'm saying it because the groundwork that's being put in. I know for a fact a lot of good things is gonna happen. You just know it.
Absolutely, and I definitely agree
And
with
for you
that.
too, Steph.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Hmm
I received that into the atmosphere. I received that. So just tell everybody where they can find and follow you.
Okay, I'm gonna do my I'm gonna do my outro for fan club if you don't mind because I'm so used to it by now. So it's your honorary wrestling girl, Seindole B. You can catch me on Instagram at Reload.Relive. You can catch me also on Twitter at Reload via Film. Same thing with TikTok at Reload.Relive. That's dot relive. Don't forget the dot. You can also catch me on YouTube, where I'm going to be doing daily vlogs about just being me, no niche needed. On YouTube at Reload.Relive. You can catch me on Wednesday with 3 of the bestest friends that anybody can have, with TWG, those wrestling girls. Shout out to them on their Twitch and now on YouTube. For every Wednesday with Fan Club. Check out everything else they have going on over there. You can probably watch me pop up on more awesome podcasts like the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. More often than usual. But yeah, and I always try and be more positive in my outro. So Steph, I want to thank you so much for still thinking of me and having me on your platform. I know you can interview anybody else. I've been waiting for this moment. We've talked about it for so long. It feels real. It feels good to be here, to be with somebody who relates it. I'm gonna say a prayer tonight to my grandmother up above that you are librarian, so that you can come over and have some jollof one day if you come back into the area. But again, I just have to thank you and thank everybody who came on. I'm blessed. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. And of course, if you ever want to come back, just shoot me a message and we'll make it happen. Okay.
Definitely be back. Definitely be
Yeah,
back.
definitely. And of course, you can follow me, your girl Stephanie Hardy, on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy. And listen to the show everywhere you get your audio podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Hardy Wrestling Podcast, where you can go back and watch this interview tomorrow. And you can listen to the audio of this interview probably tomorrow too. I'll put it up on tomorrow, if not tonight, because I'm a workaholic. But yeah, there's that. And
That part.
also, be on the lookout for my other 2 interviews that I have, which will be live this week, with Hearts from Talk of Champions and Raven Brianna from TikTok. So I'm so happy to have lots of conversations coming up in this season of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And of course, check me out on Women's Wrestling Talk on Mondays on the Wow After Show, and on Fridays on the SmackDown After Show with Dreon Santana, our editor in chief, and on the Wow After Show with Katrina of In Cat We Trust and Emily May Heller. But until next time, this is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with the girl Stephanie Hardy. Thank you to all of those who came on and watched. And of course, this is me,
Thank
Stephanie, with
you.
the Indole. And until next time, bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.